First, I would like to say that I am finding limited information on the internet concerning black tree fungus. The information I have found is often confusing or unclear, and in some cases I believe that the information is wrong. The University of Utah, for example, has incorrect information about tree fungus. I have found this to be an ongoing problem. For example, if I am researching deer bones or raccoon bones, I cannot find any clear information on the internet concerning those subjects. I cannot find any charts on deer skeletons or photographs of the individual deer bones. I am sure that quite possibly someone has uploaded at least some information on those subjects. However, it seems that Google Corporation has the ability to control what sites come up at different times. So I find that the information on the internet is sometimes lacking. So I've done my best with what was on the internet to identify some of the black fungus that I have seen on trees. In any case, I am first going to show the photograph of the fungus that I found on the internet. Then I will show you the video that I took of the different trees where black tree fungus can be mistaken for burn marks. First, there are two fungi, both called witch's butter, and they say on the internet they are often confused with one another. The first is called Exodia nigricans, and according to Wikipedia, it is also called witch's butter. And then there is Exodia glandulosa, and it is called black witch's butter. Next is a video I took of what appears to be 2 or more trees cut into pieces along a hiking trail in Peterborough, New Hampshire. The tree or trees are cut into sections and are left in a pile on the side of the trail. And I noticed this black fungus growing on several of the logs, and it appears to be witch's butter or Exodia nigricans. If you notice, it has grown at the end of a cut tree log. So what that says is that most probably there was a case of Exodia nigricans that affected a few trees along this trail. And even now, after they have been cut down, the fungus is still being spread. So this is quite possibly the most recent fungus that has grown on this tree after it was cut down. I'm going to have to assume that these trees or this tree got sick due to this black fungus. So you will see this type of black fungus is growing on many of the logs that are found in this pile. The black fungus has the consistency of slime, like the slime they sell in toy stores for kids. Since I am not an expert on tree fungus, and apparently nobody else on the internet is either, I'm going to have to guess that this is the same type of black fungus, either Exodia nigricans or Exodia glandulosa, at different stages of its development. So first it looks like this, And like I said, it has the consistency of slime. And then it develops to cover more area over time. And then I believe that eventually it begins to destroy the bark and it begins to grow on the wood of the tree itself so that it can get to the moisture and the nutrients. Then the fungus begins to take on a form like this, like a hardened coating of tar. It is dry, and when you scrape it, it turns into a black dust that resembles soot a little bit. Then, a little ways away from this log pile, this tree has also fallen over in the area. So I'm going to guess that it too was affected by the same type of fungus, which is Exodia nigricans. Throughout this video, you are going to see a few more types of black tree fungus. So if it is actually more than one type of black fungus that is affecting the trees in this small area, maybe some of you will know better. However, I think that maybe it will be difficult to tell in some cases without having some sort of test done on the fungus itself. So I'm going to have to guess that this is all the same type of fungus in different stages of its development, because it's all in this one small area and it is still being spread to trees after they are cut down. I have also seen tree fungus like this at other locations. This is a video clip from an investigative documentary called Lake of Fire. There is a tree on the side of a road that looked black from a distance, but when I got closer, I saw the strange formations of the black fungus. So it appeared like something that was growing and eating away at the tree. It did not resemble a burn mark. And the black tree fungus was causing a hollow to form in the tree. And this black fungus was eating away at the tree and was forming this hollow in its trunk. So based on what I saw along that hiking trail, I'm going to guess that this may also be Exodia nigricans. And this is how it begins to look on larger trees when the black fungus begins to take over. If you look, you will notice that oftentimes trees on the sides of roads will be infected by tree disease and will have black fungus or hollows in them as a result. I believe that oftentimes the tree roots are damaged when the road is built or the road channels too much water toward the base of the trees and ends up damaging the roots, causing root rot. So whenever you see a tree on the side of the road with a hollow or black fungus, I would say that in most, if not all cases, it is a result of root damage or other disease. The next fungus that I am going to cover is called hypoxylon. Here is a photograph found on the internet and identified as hypoxylon. Here is a video of hypoxylon fungus from a documentary entitled Juggernaut Coven. So the first shot is the hypoxylon growing on a tree log that was used to construct a teepee. And you can see how it looks like a series of black dots. About a mile or two away, in the same area, I saw the same type of fungi on a tree that appeared to have fallen over and had been cut up on the ground. The tree is located right next to a trail that led up to a small reservoir. Found right next to this tree that had the hypoxylon on it was another tree log with a black fungus that looked like this. So found right next to the hypoxylon is a black fungus that has spread over a larger part of a log, and it appears like a tar-like coating that has eliminated the bark in places. According to photographs on the internet, this may be a hypoxylon canker, or it is just hypoxylon that has begun to develop and consume the tree. So it first starts off like this, with these little black dots. Then later, it destroys the bark and attaches itself to the wood of the tree and begins to form this black tar-like coating. Again, I am basing this on the fact that some very identifiable hypoxylon is found in this area. So if this is the fungus that is present in this area, this may be what it develops into, a hypoxylon canker, or hypoxylon in a later stage of its development. Again, I am basing this on the fact that some very identifiable hypoxylon is present in the trees in this area. So it is probably best to conclude that this is also hypoxylon. However, it is identified as hypoxylon canker on the internet when it appears like this. So this is what hypoxylon may change into later in its development as it takes over more of the tree. But again, I cannot find any clear information on the internet concerning this. Okay, so when I came here about a year or two ago, I took video of this. There's an area right here that appeared to be singed, and then there's these raised bumps right here, and I wasn't sure at the time, and I kind of realized that it fell off of here, so it was very high up, so I wasn't sure if that was a burn mark. I guess that it may have been mold, so I did not publish that series of videos on the internet. And now when I return, I see that this is indeed mold. And when it dries, it kind of resembles ash in a way. Next is a type of tree disease called bacteria wetwood that discolors the bark of the tree so that it appears black. As you can see, a watery substance is leaking out of the tree bark, and it is running down the tree, or it is spreading up from the base of the tree. Once again, finding information on this or how this bacteria wetwood develops is limited at best. So I have a few different video clips of trees that I think are infected with bacteria wetwood. The first example is from a documentary entitled Horse Hill. This tree was seen at a campground, and from far away it looked like it may have been burnt. It appeared very black in the middle, and the black mark was about 6 or 7 feet high. When I got closer, I saw that there were several holes, all in proximity to each other, and the tree was also leaking sap. So I decided to take a few pieces of the bark with me to take a closer look at them under a brighter light. When I did that, I could see that it was definitely not soot, and the fungus was growing along the indentations of the bark. So under a light, it became somewhat obvious that it was fungus growing on this tree. Still, I took a razor blade and scraped the bark, and as you can see, what comes off appears to be sawdust, and it is definitely not soot. This next tree that appeared black at its base was growing on the side of a trail, partially in a drainage canal. Too much water is a common cause for trees to become infected with a fungus that eventually eats away at the bark and then the wood of the tree, so that the tree develops holes or hollows in their base. I guess that too much water will damage the roots of the tree, and then the tree becomes prone to fungus and disease. Again, I took a sample of the bark home to take a closer look at it under a light. In this case, the bark was damp, and using a razor, scraped the bark, and I found that the layer of black substance was not too deep and easily came off in little curls. When I pressed the shavings onto the paper, it did not leave too much of a mark. On the next tree that I believed to be infected with bacteria wetwood, the bark on the tree appeared very damp and was very black, especially toward the ground. I did not have a plastic bag with me, so I just took the pieces home in my pocket and I left them on the table overnight. And the next day, they had dried off and the black substance had completely disappeared. So obviously, that was black fungus and not something else. In the last example of a tree that may be infected with bacteria wetwood, it was also found alongside a trail. So I took a sample of the tree bark home, and using a razor, you are going to scrape off the black substance and see if it is a fungus. Often something like this, which is what I believe is bacteria wetwood, will be damp and will appear like damp wood shavings once scraped off. So through this method, you can tell pretty quickly if it is fungus or soot. And that is what I recommend anyone to do who comes across a tree like this and is uncertain. So you could either do the test at the tree or take a sample of the bark home in a plastic bag and then look at it under a light. You could also let the sample dry out overnight and see if the black fungus disappears once it has dried. Now, let's look at a sample of bark taken from a tree stump that, in my opinion, had obviously been burned. The clip is taken from a documentary called Horse Hill. When I first found this tree stump along a hiking trail, I did not have my camera with me, so here are a few photographs that I took with my cell phone. I returned with my camera and a plastic bag and took a piece of the tree bark home to analyze. One side of the tree stump was black and the other was not, and the tree bark was not damp, and it was damaged in such a way that a large piece of the tree bark came off in one unit. And I observed that there was no damage to the wood underneath the bark. So the damage was just done to the outside layer of the tree bark. which is not what you will find with a lot of the tree fungi like Exodia nigricans and hypoxylon. A lot of the black fungi tends to destroy the bark and then want to get underneath it and then grow on the bare wood to be close to moisture and nutrients. It will then develop to appear like a smooth coating of tar, which will appear different than a burn mark. So taking a sample of this bark, I used a razor to scrape the surface, and I found that the black substance was dry and it scraped off like a black powder or ash. This black substance was 2 or 3 times as deep as the layers of tree fungus on the other samples. The soot made a dark mark on the paper, and I could see that pretty obviously that the tree stump had been damaged by fire. The next thing I want to show you is a hiking trail that went up the side of a hill, and found on this hiking trail was a dozen or more trees, all with damage to the bases of their trunks. Since the hiking trail went up the side of a hill, it was flooded in many parts because the trail was acting as something of a drainage canal. All of the water was coming off the hillside and was drifting onto the trail, and it was very muddy in some areas. So because of this, I guess that many trees that lined the trail developed root rot or damage to their roots. So the trees became sick and lost their bark toward their base. I did not see any substantial black fungus on these trees. But I did find one small tree having fallen to the ground, and it was covered with a layer of black fungus. Again, there is no scale-like pattern, which is how logs appear when burnt. The black fungus appears like a layer of tar. So it is obvious that this is fungus that has probably affected all the trees along this hiking trail after their roots were damaged from too much water. So when you start to recognize this, it becomes easier to tell which trees are infected with a black fungus. I would like to address something called sooty mold that I found on the internet. So here are a few photographs that were put on the internet and were all marked as sooty mold. So this was about a year ago, and Google had these images posted on the Google Images website if you type in and search for sooty mold. So after looking at these photographs again recently, it appears as if the first photograph is actually of something like bacteria wetwood, and the second photograph appears like the tree may have some sort of disease or insect problem. However, recently, if you search Wikipedia for sooty mold, Wikipedia states that sooty mold affects plants and grows on their leaves. Nowhere does it mention that sooty mold affects trees. However, I've seen trees, sometimes small trees, covered with dark areas like this. This tree was found along a hiking trail. As you can see, the fungus has affected almost the whole tree, eliminating its bark in a lot of places. So I think that this is some type of fungus growth like we have covered in this video. There was also this tree in an investigative documentary entitled Blood Hill. This smaller tree was located right next to an area where people had a fire pit and what appeared to be a target range. The small tree was damaged with a hollow forming at its base, and the tree looked discolored. Since the tree was found in a suspicious area, I cannot say that I am positive that this tree was damaged due to fungus. I'm going to guess that fungus may be the reason it looks like this. However, this tree was found in a very suspicious area, right next to a fire pit. So I cannot say for sure that this tree was not damaged by fire. But if I had to guess, I would say that it is a fungus that infected this tree.